So Justin and I have made a bunch of videos talking through many different players, but we wanted to narrow down all of our favorite players into just one video. So here's a look at 6 players that Justin and I are drafting in every single league that we think you should too. Roll the tape. Nico Collins is a top 10 fantasy wide receiver this year. I would take Nico very clearly as the first Houston receiver off the board, but also over other receivers like Brandon Ayuk, Drake London, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, and I'm even debating him over Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr., but their upsides and their offensives is still so massive, even if we haven't seen it from them yet, that I still think I'm taking those two over Nico Collins, but it's really close. But a top 10 ranking for Nico Collins is really above market, as he's the wide receiver 16 on ESPN and Yahoo ADP, and I understand why people would look to other receivers before Nico. Some have done it longer, some have better pedigrees, or in less seemingly crowded offenses. It really is just a testament to how many great receivers are in the league right now, but for me, Nico Collins is ahead of all of them. And really my argument comes down to one simple fact. Nico's 2023 season was not a fluke. 80 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns in 15 games played. That is 90 receptions for almost 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns over a full 17-game season, which is more or less identical to the seasons that Puka Nacua and A.J. Brown just had as top 5 fantasy wide receivers. And then you look at all of his analytics from last year. His reception perception numbers weren't just elite, they were out of this world. 5th in success rate versus man, right there with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. 12th in success rate versus double coverage among qualified receivers around Chase and Puka. And he was 3rd in success rate versus press coverage ahead of Lamb, Adams, A.J. Brown, and just behind only Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk. His worst success rate was against zone coverage, but even that was 80%, which is right next to Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs. His per route and reception stats were also elite. He was 2nd in the league in yards per route run behind only Tyreek Hill, 7th in targets per route run, up there with Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was 3rd in yards after the catch per reception, and he was the 4th highest graded receiver according to Pro Football Focus, tied with Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. And then there is this tweet that really hit me from Kyle Vorchak at Roto World, saying that Nico Collins' 3.1 yards per route run and 90.6 PFF grade would have been career highs for Stephon Diggs, and Nico did that in year 3 in the NFL. Nico Collins is 100% the best wide receiver on the Texans. There is no question in my mind that that is not true. And if CJ Stroud takes the second-year leap, as we all expect, there is a world where Nico Collins puts up 1,400 plus yards, 10 plus touchdowns this year in 2024, a la A.J. Brown once he got Jalen Hurts, or Stephon Diggs once he got Josh Allen. That is the realm that Nico Collins has entered after what he did last year and how that projects forward. He is a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, and to be able to draft him for anything less than that is absolutely stealing. But before we move on, I wanted to let y'all know to head over to 4for4.com and sign up for a subscription today to gain access to the industry's best fantasy rankings from award-winning ranker for accuracy, John Paulson. Plus, you get access to our live draft assistant, cheat sheets, trade calculator, articles, and there are additional packages for DFS and betting content too. Make sure to use the code YouTube at checkout to receive 25% off your annual subscription today. Nobody in fantasy this year makes more sense for a massively explosive 2024 campaign than Dolphins running back De'Von Achane, the absolute lightning in a bottle and potential RB1 in this high caliber Miami offense. Just to recap what De'Von Achane did last year, he played 9 games in which he played at least 40% of snaps, and in those 9 games, he averaged 14 touches, 110 total yards, 1.2 total touchdowns, and 20.9 fantasy points per game, which would have made him the RB3 on the season last year behind only Kyren Williams and Christian McCaffrey. Even if you remove the 50 bomb that he dropped in week 3, he still averaged 17 points per game in his other 8 games, which would have been good for RB7 last year, sandwiched right between Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs. That is the type of game-breaking ability that Achane has for fantasy football. And to take this one step further, there are 2 key tweets that I've seen on Twitter that really drives home the upside for Achane in year 2. The first is from Ryan Heath at fantasypoints.com, who found that since 2014, only 7 rookie running backs drafted in rounds 1 through 3 of the NFL draft outperformed their weighted opportunities per game by 2.5 PPR points per game. Achane is the only rookie running back to do that from last year, and minus J.K. Dobbins missing his sophomore season with an ACL injury, the other 5 running backs all went on to have volume increases in year 2, and 4 out of 5 averaged 20 PPR points per game in year 2. The only one who didn't was 2016 Todd Gurley, who was playing in a Jeff Fisher offense, but as we all know, went on to have multiple 25-plus point per game seasons after Jeff Fisher was fired in a Shanahan/Sean McVay offense. Ryan also pointed out that all 5 of those backs experienced regression in their efficiency from year 1 to year 2, but the increases in volume more than made up for the losses of that efficiency. And then we have the second tweet from fellow YouTuber Ron Stewart, who again found that Achane is one of 7 rookie running backs since 2009 to hit 3+ fantasy points over expectation. The other 6 all went on to post 20+ point per game seasons in year 2, and he also notes that Achane posted the highest fantasy points over expectation season by any rookie running back since 2009. So if we expect Achane to follow suit with recent history over the last 10 to 15 years of rookie running backs, he is in for an absolutely bonkers 2024 season. The only thing that could possibly stop Achane this year would really just be injury, which was his primary issue last year too. But in college, Achane played 30 out of a possible 34 games over his career, and we have seen plenty of NFL running backs struggle with injuries in one season and then play an entire season right after that. It's just the nature of the running back position in the NFL. The point is that you should not be scared of injuries when you are drafting, but what you should be scared of is missing out on a legitimate league winner at the running back position, especially when that player is consistently being taken in the late 2nd or even 3rd round of your fantasy drafts. I think it's safe to say that this is the year. This is the year that we get the Kyle Pitts breakout season that we've been waiting for since the end of his rookie year. Everything is lined up in his favor for a breakout 2024 season. He is fully healthy now, 2 years removed from the MCL injury that he suffered in November of 2022, which is very similar to ACL injuries where players don't fully return to pre-injury production numbers until year 2. We see it all the time with running backs, and Kyle Pitts is no different, and it explains a lot in regards to a down 2023 season. Which, speaking of a down 2023, statistically it was rough when you're looking at just his counting stats, but analytically, Kyle Pitts continues to operate within elite tight end ranges that just scream breakout season. I mean, he was first in route participation among all tight ends last year, first in snap percentage out wide, 3rd in snap percentage in the slot, 2nd in yards per reception, 1st in average depth of target, 1st in air yards market share, and here's the real kicker, last in catchable pass rate, meaning he saw the fewest number of targets that were deemed actually catchable among all tight ends last year. So he was doing all of that while injured, catching passes from Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke in a horrendous Arthur Smith offense. Imagine what he'll do fully healthy with Kirk Cousins, one of the most accurate passers in the league over the last few years, in a brand new McVay-style offense under Zach Robinson. Oh, and he is still just 23 years old despite entering his 4th year in the league. The stage is completely set for Kyle Pitts to have his breakout season that everyone has been hoping for, not just by returning to his 2021 rookie form, but an actual difference-making positional advantage league winner. And the best part is, since everyone's been burned by him for 2 years in a row, a lot of people are out on him for redraft. He is routinely being found in the 6th or even 7th rounds of your drafts as the 7th or 8th tight end off the board. That is incredible value for a player that can easily finish as a tight end 1 in fantasy this year, allowing you to stack studs at running back and wide receiver early, and then grab a home run swing at Kyle Pitts in the mid rounds. I mean, sign me up.
One here. One timeout. Murray keeps it himself. Sneaks in. Touchdown.
Murray missed the first 9 games of the 2023 season with a torn ACL, but was just fine taking off the ball during his return. He racked up 44 rush attempts in his 8 games and scored a touchdown in each of his first 3 weeks. According to Next Gen Stats, Murray finished among the top 20 fastest ball carriers on 4 separate occasions, so half of his games played. Per Cardinals beat writer Kyle Odegaard, the source close to the quarterback said, "Last year, you didn't see the cutting or the shake and bake. Expect to see it again moving forward." Of course, this is best shape of my life season, but it would make sense that the QB wasn't fully back to 100%, considering his ACL surgery took place in January of the 2023 calendar. By this September, he will be past the 18th month mark and could pack an even bigger punch on the ground than we saw in the second half of last year. In the 2020 to 2022 seasons, Murray scored 280 fantasy points through the ground game, averaging out to about 6.8 fantasy points in 41 games. This was quite a bit more than his 5.3 rushing points last season when he finished as the QB 10. A return to form as a rusher could make a bit of a steal at this price, but his supporting cast has also improved year to year. This starts at the top with 4th overall selection of blue chip wide receiving option Marvin Harrison Jr. The main options from last season were Marquise Brown, Michael Wilson, and Greg Dortch. This isn't to say the team won't also rotate Harrison into the slot, but his presence alone should help Wilson and Dortch be more efficient with their targets. With a more efficient pass-catching group and a very solid option in Trey Benson to rotate in with James Conner, Kyler should easily match his QB10 production coming off of his ACL injury with upside for much more.
The difference between this league and our team is we got Derrick Henry.
He's just a big bowling ball, man.
Man, oh man, he stiff-armed Rayshon Jenkins right down to the field. That was a man-sized run by the man, Derrick Henry.
At first glance, Derrick Henry's new home doesn't look all that promising. Justice Hill has become a Ravens rotation staple. Keaton Mitchell looked allergic to being tackled last year, and Lamar Jackson as well. Lamar Jackson. They even added Rasheen Ali in the 5th round of the NFL draft, and he had nearly 550 collegiate touches at Marshall. But make no mistake about it, Baltimore didn't go out and grab Derrick Henry just to force him into a similar rotation that the team has been employing for years. There were even indications that GM Eric DeCosta tried trading for the back last fall, but the deal fell through when the Titans couldn't agree on terms. The Ravens eventually got Henry, who was admittedly in the back end of his career, but things aren't as bad as we would assume for a 30-year-old RB. Behind arguably the worst offensive line in the league last season, Henry ranked 14th in EPA per attempt in short yardage situations, scored the 8th most touchdown from inside the opponent's 5-yard line, and was stopped for 0 or fewer yards at the 10th lowest rate. His yards after contact were the 12th highest in the league, and his 33% breakaway run rate was the 6th highest. By most accounts, Henry is still a top 10 back or higher, and his offensive environment is bounds better than it was last season. Over the last 3 years, Lamar Jackson's rushing from inside the 5-yard line has dropped from 41% to 27% to 14% last year. This led to Gus Edwards handling a league-leading 23 goal line carries, resulting in 12 touchdowns. There's no reason to believe Henry won't absorb that exact role this year.
The Jacksonville Jaguars select Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver, LSU.
A true vertical weapon.
Yeah, he is silky smooth.
And I love this fit here. Out goes Calvin Ridley. In comes Brian Thomas Jr.
With the 18th overall selection of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Brian Thomas Jr. The LSU Tiger switches from one cat to another and will help fill a vast hole created by the free agency loss of Calvin Ridley and the release of Zay Jones. With Christian Kirk and tight end Evan Ingram solidifying the short and intermediate areas of the field, Thomas could become the team's wide receiver 1 with plenty of vertical targets from quarterback Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars are missing the 2nd highest percentage of air yards and the highest percentage of targets from inside the opponent's 10-yard line from last season. Thomas should slide immediately into the X role in the new-look Jaguars pass-catching group and be on the field for nearly 100% of the snaps. If he ends up flowing directly into Ridley's role from last season, we certainly won't have any issues with volume. Ridley ran the 5th most routes in the NFL in 2023, accounting for 132 targets. The 6'4" Brian Thomas will likely continue in the role of big-bodied end zone target. The rookie might end up with the 3rd most targets on the team, depending on what you think about the likelihood of a repeat of Ingram's huge 2023 target share, but Thomas could very reasonably lead the team in touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. only had one breakout season at LSU, but his athletic profile and ability to win over the top should have us excited for fantasy football. There is plenty of upside here for a player coming off the board as the wide receiver 47.